Hey, you like cars? I'm back. Episode 68. And if you're looking at the video, you can tell, you might even tell from the audio that I'm not in my normal spot, traveling again, work related. The Traveling Pod is back for another episode. Episode 68, CarQuicks podcast. We're back. I'm back. How are y'all doing? How are you feeling? How are your loved ones, your children? I'm glad you can join me. I'm glad you're here again. If you listen to the audio, listen to the video, thank you again. Subscribe, follow, tell a friend, tell a colleague, tell your mother, your daughter, your sister, your brother, your cousin about the CarQuicks podcast. But today, it's going to be a tad bit short because, one, honestly, I'm tired. Okay, I just drove where I had to go. And, I have at times just, do I want to talk through a long podcast? I want to make it short. Today's probably going to be a short one, but we got some interesting things to talk about, and I'm not going to waste any time. We're going to drive right into the main subject at hand, and if you were following anything in the automotive space during the week, then you already know that Tesla was making all the headlines. Now, what I'm talking about is the Cybercab. Now, before I get to that, though, I will say the video I saw of them having one of their space, rockets return and get caught by their platform look like AI because they're so crazy. So I'm going to give them their props at SpaceX because what I saw looked crazy. It looked nuts. It looked like the future, honestly. Like you had never seen nothing like that. And I thought it was a made-up video at first. And then I saw another one, the other ones, the people at the launch. And I was like, oh, snap. That's crazy. So anyways, that's just kind of a beside fact thing. But to get to the podcast about cars. And let me always preface that I'm in the world's noisiest chair. You hear that? Like this chair is ridiculous. I'm out just sit on. If it gets too crazy, at some point in time, I'm gonna go sit on the floor. I'm just being honest because this chair is bugging out. Now, let's just get to something. So if you hear the chair in the background, just forgive me, okay? We'll get back to the regular schedule program when I get back home. Anyways, Cybercab. So Tesla has, if you know Tesla, you know that every few years they do a big press conference and they roll out some cars that do make it to fruition and some that take many years and some that almost they forgot about, like the Tesla Roadster. But some things like the semi-truck trickle in a little bit. Some come out to full production like the Cybertruck. And others are just kind of like ideas. So Tesla brought out some things that they are talking about when it comes to mass transportation. And I'm going to put an asterisk on the mass part on some of it, but they were bringing out things to talk about mass transportation. That was their main thing. And the Cybercab was the first model. Looks cool. Not going to knock it. Very futuristic looking. Kind of a Cybertruck-esque front headlight strip in the front. Butterfly doors. I'm going to get to that in a second. It doesn't look bad. Actually, let me just get to the doors right now. Why? Why must we have these crazy doors on what is being touted as a under $30,000 point-to-point? And I'm going to read a quote that Elon Musk said himself. He said that it is a premium point-to-point transportation and individualized mass transportation, right? So it's a very minimalistic, simplified design on the outside. It looks clean. I mean, the wheels look like giant plates, but it has that very futuristic, Blade Runner, iRobot kind of look. And for anybody that sees this stuff that they made, and I'll dive into it more, this resembles a certain movie, like some of the stuff that's in here, and I will not deny it. It looks like it. If you say it doesn't, I'm just going to say a line. Now, very Cyber-esque look on the front. You can kind of see that maybe some of their stuff that's starting to have some type of design language that they're using on the Cybertruck, right? And so this is supposed to be a cab, right? That is under $30,000, fully autonomous. There is no steering wheel. There are no pedals. You are going to get in this cab and you're going to trust that the systems at play are going to get you safely to your destination without you doing anything but saying, take me to so-and-so. and it gets you there safely. You can't do anything. You can't stop it. If it's making a wrong turn, if it's going down a one way, if it decides it wants to accelerate you into the middle of the ocean, if it wants to just take off, there's nothing you can do about it except command it to say, please stop. And hopefully the computer decides it wants to stop. Now, I know that's getting into like kind of the crazy dystopian idea of like this AI and all these systems, though I use them and I do like them and they have a benefit. It's remiss for me to think, it would be remiss of me if I didn't mention that there is a risk here when it comes to utilizing these systems and the trust that we have to have in that the back end, the people that are configuring and programming and stuff are putting into place safeguards for almost the inevitable of it goes wrong. So this cab that they're doing only says 2 people. So that's kind of, it's just already odd, right? And I'm gonna kind of get all my thoughts together in a minute. And then you have these crazy doors. So here's my whole thing about this cybercab. Elon says that, and I'm not an Elon hater. I like the Teslas. I like many of them. I think they make a lot of sense for a lot of people. I think for an electric car, Tesla makes the most sense because their infrastructure and the charging station is well known and it's reliable and you can get it anywhere. So no knock to that. I think that it makes more sense than a lot of these other electric cars that are coming out, right? But if we're trying to say we're going to have a cab, we're going to move people from A to B, why are we back to a vehicle that only can fit 2 people? That's less than the old Crown Vic. Now, granted, you could say most of the transportation of cabs back in the day was 1 or 2 people in there. I'm sure there's some statistics that says most of the cab rides that ever happened between 1987 and 2024 averaged 2.75 people. So you could say 2 people in a cab isn't any different than 2 people in the back of a Crown Vic with a driver. So you eliminate the driver, you got less people kind of in the car. I get that part. When he said a premium point-to-point transportation, individualized mass transportation, and he said premium, in my brain said, isn't that just somebody buying a luxury car and only taking their friend? Like, if it makes sense to me if we were talking about somebody not wanting to drive. But if he's saying that this is a premium individualized mass transportation, I'm like, that's called the car. I can fit 2 people in my car and we can drive somewhere. And if I had a luxury car, it would be a premium form of transportation. I guess the idea is like you don't have to drive. And the idea would be that these robot cyber cabs and that fully autonomous would better suit a city and avoid the accidents and congestion and all the things that human error and things like that can come into play. But if that is to be the case, I'm always like, why do we have to add some part of it that makes the cost probably go up? Like the doors, for instance. Why would this have butterfly doors? Like, for what reason? And if you're saying it's under $30,000, I'm like, there's no way them doors are helping us get to under that price tag. Because if you made conventional doors, then we would very well be able to get to a very cheap price. I don't think it's a bad idea. I do think it's kind of funny that the idea of mass transportation involves a 2-seat premium experience as opposed to we don't have a driver, so here's a 6-passenger type of vehicle or a 5-passenger type of vehicle. The 2-passenger one was interesting, that would be the one that comes out first. But he did answer my idea that I just said about more people. They had the Robovan. Now, I'm going to be perfectly frank. This Robovan is borderline vaporware. But he said they're going to build it. It's for when you need something bigger than a Model Y. They said if you want to carry up to 20 people or want to use it for distributing things or shipping things or what they call like the last mile, like using these vans to run around and deliver things and people and use it as a full autonomous van. Now, looking at this van and looking at the cybercab, you cannot tell me that this stuff does not look like it came from iRobot. The cybercab looks like part of the Audi that Will Smith was driving, and this Robovan looks like the vehicle that the robots were in the movie. This has inspiration from iRobot. You can't tell me otherwise, okay? And we're going to get further into that in a second. So the Robovan is out, and he shows that as a concept. They didn't even drive that out. At least the Cybercab was a physical vehicle that they were driving around and that he got inside of. The Robovan is the idea that they have this van that can hold up to 20 people, and it would have a cost of like 5 to 10 cents per mile. And then it would be fully autonomous, fully mass transportation. Now that to me kind of makes sense, obviously, because you're putting more people inside of it if you're going to make a bus or a train, which with all the vehicles on the ground, though, if we're talking mass transportation, I'm still in the camp of like, can we get some fully autonomous trains, high speed ones that go around the city, autonomous buses that run, on their own track or road or something that isn't blocked by the likes of individual traffic, monorail or something. We've already done this obviously with some of those other system of trains, but to me, mass transportation, especially in the United States, if we had a high-speed train that went from New York to California and then up and down from Chicago to, Texas or, Atlanta or somewhere, or Chicago to wherever it may be, we start getting to that mass transportation in this country. I'm always talking about trains because it's like one of the greater pieces that even places like Japan did, and they did it very well. And it makes a lot of sense for how many people you're moving at a high rate of speed without the need to make the infrastructure of roads for autonomous vehicles and how much money, taxes, and building that would cost in order to implement it correctly. Now, I'm not saying I'm some wizard on the mass for transportation. I'm just saying we definitely could use some high-speed trains. That's never a knock. Like there's no downside to saying, hey, we got some high-speed trains that hit all the major points and cities in America. You can get from here to California in under 13 hours. You can get here to here in this many. I mean, that would be dope. Now, continuing on with what Tesla was talking about, we enter in Optimus. Not robots in disguise. Not that Optimus, not Transformers, the Tesla robot. Now, back to my iRobot thing. Clearly, there's inspiration from that movie in everything that's here. So this is a personal robot. You've already seen the videos of it talking and serving some drinks at a bar, even though word comes out now that during that whole entire time, it was being controlled by a human, probably on the other end when it comes to Wi-Fi, and commanding it to what to say. No surprise there. They've been building these internally to try to figure out some way to finally get it to mass production for people to have it in their house. So you're talking about a $20,000 to $30,000 gadget. And Elon says it can do anything you want. It can babysit the kids, can mow the lawn, it can go get groceries. Now, I'm not saying, listen, if I can get a robot to go say, hey, go wash your dishes, do the house chores, clean the house, mow the lawn. I mean, I'm all for it. I mean, honestly, I'd be one of the people in iRobot that had the robot and shouldn't have bought it. And Will Smith would be telling me, why do you got that in your house? I'm like, hey, listen, man, this thing cleans all the kitchen, does the laundry, folds the clothes. I ain't hating. I'm cool. But this is obviously so many years in the future of that idea, especially when he said babysitting kids. And I'm like, Elon, you got to chill out, dog. You got to chill out. Nobody's leaving Optimus to watch over their kids, or at least they shouldn't. I'm not saying folks won't. People have done dumber things that have kids than letting the Tesla robot watch over them. But I promise that when this comes available and they say you can pre-order one, you're going to see plenty of people with more money to burn than I have. And they're going to put this thing in their house. There's going to be a video. They're going to put it inside of their Tesla with the Tesla robot. You know that video's coming. Then somebody's going to put the Tesla robot driving the Tesla on the road from the passenger seat to talk to her while it's driving. You already know what's coming. I'm just letting you know what Elon put out there. So Tesla robot's coming along with presumably the Cybercab and this Robovan. We got some other bigger fish to fry. So I'm assuming that this is behind the Roadster, that was supposed to come. We never got the Roadster. It's supposed to be here. So it's probably behind that. And, there's a lot of infrastructure that has to happen before we have fully autonomous anything. This Tesla, quote unquote, self-driving isn't as fully autonomous as many people want to believe or they'll trust. There's a lot of things in play here. But on the positive note, it is cool to kind of see this push of what's to come in the future and figuring out ways to help with the transportation of things. Yeah, I don't want to you're not giving up driving for me. Like, I'm not giving up the manual GR Corolla or any other car I might have in the future for the likes of a Cybercab or any car that doesn't have a steering wheel or pedals. To me, I'm not down for that. And it might sound like, oh, you're just an old guy, old head, don't want to know nothing but the future. I just like driving. That's just what it is. I don't want to necessarily be in a car that just I can't drive unless we're talking about a very small, like 15-minute city where they're like, hey, we made this big area like Walt Disney World. If you want to get to the other side of the park, jump in our autonomous car, it will take you over there. I'll do that. But if you're saying jump in an autonomous car and drive all the way to downtown Houston, I'm going to say, not right now. I'm good. So getting back to the cars. After all the Tesla stuff, let's get back to some exciting cars. So a while back, there was a group of guys that made a car, and they had they had a company called oilstainlab. And they made what essentially looked like an old school Le Mans Porsche race car. I talked about it in my podcast before. It looked fire, dope. Just this cool garage, rat rodish, hot rod, Porsche front end, Le Mans V8 type of project car that they were driving around the country doing a tour. They had dope footage, very old school road trippy, dusk sunset style inside of the videos. They were driving to car shows, showing people it off. It looked nuts. Well, those two brothers who made that first car are finally out with their production version of that idea called the HF11. Now, here's another thing. These names, we got to do better. We got to do better than HF-11 or 11. We got to do better. But what they did do good on is this looks certifiably fire. You can see the picture on the video. This looks like a Le Mans race car almost, or like a street version of it. Porsche-esque front end. It's basically the size of a 993 Porsche, a little bit longer than the Subaru BRZ, as they said. And here's some of the numbers that they're targeting. Curb weight of 2,000 pounds. That's crazy. Up to 850 horsepower. And you get there with two powertrain options. You can have a naturally aspirated V8, or you can have a swappable electric powertrain. That's very interesting. The V8 on its own makes 650 horsepower, naturally aspirated in a V8, up to 12,000 RPM redline. I already know that sounds crazy. The electric motor setup is up to 850 horsepower. They didn't show or talk about what that looks like. They said it's swappable. Now, what would be absolutely crazy if they somehow made this a hot swap that you could do in your garage. Like, you can drop the motor out the cradle. Given how electric motors run and how gas, ice-powered engines run, it's not going to be hot swappable to that degree, because you're talking about removing gas lines and coolant lines and then putting in the electric motor, and they might have coolant lines for the battery and things like that. So when they say swappable, I'm thinking they're saying you can buy both drivetrains, bring it to our authorized dealership, and give us about 2 days, and we can have an electric version at your doorstep for you, or put the V8 back in, vice versa. But anyways, it looks dope. It looks just like the concept, not the concept, but the one that they were touring in America with, even cleaned up now. They got this orange paint on it. The interior looks dope. 6-speed manual on this naturally aspirated V8. Just very much that analog core dope side of building a car. That is what I like about what they did here, because the original one they had that very backyard special. We did this in our garage and we did something exciting. So now you get the more polished version of it. And it's impressive, especially from the fact that how light it is, how it looks. It looks like a race car. And you're going to need $2.35 million. Now let's get back to something I said a long time ago. Actually, no, I think I said it last episode when I was talking about the McLaren W1. If you have $1 to $3 million, you have more options on cars than we do in anything under 50,000. I mean, you have a plethora of options. Gunther Works, Singer, oilstainlab, HF11s, W1s, Ferraris, Lamborghini. I mean, you have so many options. Now, let me ask, y'all don't want to spend 40 to 50,000 on a fun sports car like U Supra, or maybe the four-cylinder ones, you can find one. GR Corollas, Type Rs, WRXs, BRZs, GR86, Miatas. I mean, like, the list starts crunching down very quickly. But then the people on the other end that want, $2-3 million, they're like, hey, I got too many options. I can't even afford all these. There's so many. That's what's crazy. So HF11, they have 6 people. They want to build 11 to 12 of these, I believe. They already said they have 5 to 6 people that are already like, here's my money, because clearly I'm just not in those groups. They got the 2.35 million ready to go, and they want to build one of these. And if I had the money, I too would be on that list, because this looks absolutely nuts. And it preserves that analog way of building these bespoke kind of coach-built cars, which is what I said before. In this price range, it is cool to see this stuff being dreams into reality. Because a lot of these cars, if you see them, you're like, this stuff is like what you draw up as a kid. Like, what would a cool sports car, exotic car look like? And that's what some of the stuff is looking like. Like the Nilu one looks absolutely bonkers. Then you have this HF11, and I'm like, that's what's dope about this, is that you're getting these very bespoke cars. I don't know what it looks like as an owner, like as time goes on, because I'd be driving it enough where I'm like, I might put 50,000 miles on this thing. Like, what does the service model look like? Like, their shop might only be in some offbeat town in the middle of nowhere where I'm got to ship the car back there. But granted, if they're spending millions of dollars on a car, they probably would suspect that you have the means to get it back to them if they need to do some service on it. Now, speaking about somebody that has an exuberant amount of money, Mark Zuckerberg, Mr. Facebook himself, Mr. $206 billion net worth. He actually had an interesting car made. He had a custom Porsche Cayenne made for his wife. Now, not any normal Porsche Cayenne. You probably think maybe it's something from Mansory or some other modified car, like maybe took it to RDB in LA and did something to it. I don't know. He did not. He did take it to a very famous spot in California called West Coast Customs. If you remember from back when Exhibit was running around pimping rides, that's those people. And what he did was, she wanted some type of minivan or something for their family that was bigger than what the Cayenne had. And they essentially made him a Cayenne minivan, which they cut the body in half somehow, added more material to it, added a sliding door, and the end result looks like this. You see on the screen? Hot garbage. Okay, I'm sorry. This is no knock to Zuckerberg himself or Mark, because he just had an idea and wanted to find out who can do it. But this is part of the course for West Coast Custom and how this looks. But this does not look good at all. This looks dope. This doesn't look dope. It doesn't. I mean, what are we talking about? This looks trash. But here's all I want to say. Not because he doesn't have the money. This man has $206 billion. If this conversion cost him $1 million, it didn't even wake him up out of bed. And that's when I want to talk about somebody that we have seen make some of the craziest custom cars in our lifetime, and that is a Sultan of Brunei. Any car person knows the stories about this family. I don't know what country they were in the Middle East, but where Brunei is, I forgot. I didn't look it up. They are known and have been documented to have the wildest collection of one-off cars ever made by all the major players. Now, the reason why I'm talking like this is because if you got $206 billion, and I don't know how much the Brunei family would have. I don't even know if they had up to $206 billion. They might have had 50 or 60, which is still absolutely absurdity. He's worth 206. You're telling me you couldn't get Let me give you an example. The Sultan of Brunei had a Ferrari 456 wagon. I read about the Sultan of Brunei, and I've seen recent articles pop up in the last 1 to 3 years. I read about this story. It must have been Road and Track or Car and Driver magazine. I'm talking early 2000s. Early. I have been reading about the Sultan of Brunei on forums back before camera phones were out. about how crazy this collection was. I'm talking custom one-off Bentleys, Rolls Royces, Ferraris, Porsches, McLarens, anything that you can think of. They were building it for this family. So much so that they said there were some companies that were on retainer for like 50 million a year, 40 million, 30 million, 20 million. I mean, stupid numbers. And whatever they were dreaming up, whatever they wanted, they were building. If I have a picture, I might throw it on the screen. If I don't, forgive me. Okay, I'm on the road. All right. But what I'm saying is this Cayenne thing, I'm like, it's cool. It probably looks interesting and cool in person. Hey, maybe it's at the SEMA show and I'm there. I don't know. But given what the Brunei family did, I would assume without $206 billion net worth, I'm like, you're telling me you couldn't really work that deal on the back end? Like, people make one-off Ferraris. They make one-off cars. Make a one-off Porsche minivan. I mean, like, if that is what she wanted, or if that's what you're trying to do, I'm like, then do it. Because you have the money to make this look crazy. You have enough money to say, I want you guys, let's say you want the drivetrain of the Porsche. You got enough money to say, I need somebody to make me a custom body. It don't matter how much it costs. Now, he could very well also just been like, I don't want to spend some exuberant amount of money on an idea that really ain't going to be worth nothing in a minute. And when the kids get older, we're going to get rid of it. But I'm basically saying that the Brunei family, the Sultan of Brunei, had one-off cars that were absolutely crazy. And he had wagons from like Bentley and just stuff that does not exist. They got it from the manufacturer, built to their standards at that time. I'm sure a lot of those cars, unfortunately, deteriorating somewhere in some warehouse. But just so you know, it can be done. Like, before I wrap this up, Honda's in the news, unfortunately, for a recall. 1.7 million Hondas have to be recalled for faulty steering worm gear that wears out the grease in it that keeps it, lubricated. And then all of a sudden the steering effort increases, and that affects many of their popular, from Civic to CRV. So if you have one of those cars, it's a lot of recalls going on. Unfortunately, the nature of manufacturing doesn't seem like it's as tight as it used to be, even on the most well-known players, Toyota, Honda, anybody else. Ford got recalls left and right, everybody, Dodge and Chrysler. So, I mean, it's just a lot of things that are happening that, unfortunately, you don't want to hear when you're spending this much money on cars. When cars are median price $50,000, it's like, come on, dogs. Like, y'all making the money. Or maybe you're not, because even with all these recalls and stuff going on, you hear about the decline of electric cars, and they're a very small percentage decline in, sales. But they talked about Porsche Taycan. They're like, the sales on the Taycan are like through the tank, like down massive percentages. But if you look on the used car market for EVs, you see they depreciate like you threw a brick out the window. So I'm not even surprised. If you want to buy an electric car right now, please save yourself the embarrassment of trying to trade that thing in and go buy a used one and drive it till the wheels fall off. Because unfortunately, if it needs another battery like a Model 3 or something, that's going to cost you the whole entire car. So move with caution, move with purpose. And to end this GR Corolla updates, our favorite segment. I don't have any really updates. I have a part to put on, a turbo inlet. I didn't do it. I was supposed to do it before I left. I got too busy. I didn't feel like doing it. I was being lazy, okay? It was hot. I was at a car meet. I was at Catalina. I was chilling. I was hanging out with some friends. Then I came home and I was like, I'm not motivated to put on this turbo inlet. Plus, I'm going to shoot the video for the people that like me shooting videos and kind of showing all the details. You got to take off the cowl. You got to do things. So I'm going to take some more time on this setup so that when people who want to do this, similar to what I did with the downpipe, have a very good visual on what it looks like and how to do it. And then seamless shows coming. I'm going to keep saying this until I'm there. I am beyond excited, okay? The potential of what this can do for me, for what I want for this podcast, for the YouTube channel, things of that nature is massive. And I'm going to be here. I'm going to be there. I got shirts coming. Just so you know, little sneak information if you made it to this end of the podcast. I have an idea for shirts that I'm wearing that's going to say CarQuicks when I'm at the SEMA show. Not necessarily to sell, because I'm using premium stuff here. It's really for me and my wife. But I'm going to see what the reaction is. I'm going to put it on. You're going to see it on the podcast. You're going to see it on some of my videos. I'm just going to start wearing the stuff. I'm making enough of them for myself and some hoodies. And I'm going to see what the reaction is. And if it's enough for me to warrant maybe having some merchandise, and hey, cool, I might throw it up there for somebody to like pre-order one. I don't know. Don't hold me to it. If you make a comment saying I want a shirt, you don't even know what it looks like yet. Just know it'll look fire. And until then, do as you wish and do as you may. It's Cameron Biggs, your host. It's a CarQuicks podcast live from another hotel room. I will see y'all around at my normal scheduled place and program, the extra bedroom in the house, aka the studio, the podcast CarQuicks studio, and I'll see y'all then. Take care. Peace.